Hey guys, what's going on? It's Jordan. Welcome back to the channel. Thank you for stopping by. So, I am going to be doing a review, I guess. Something, I just want to talk about this lens, probably one of the most underrated lenses that everybody hates, the kit lens. So let's go ahead and get into it. So, the kit lens, my friends, somehow has always gotten a bad rap from people, especially like the bigger, like, I wouldn't say like bigger stars on YouTube, like photographers and stuff, but it somehow always winds up being shamed by everybody that started using the kit lens, started getting into like prime lenses, and then bought more expensive zoom lenses. So this lens right here, while it's not necessarily the greatest lens, everybody gets it for free. It's their first zoom lens, number one. So you get a wide to a telephoto. So 18 to 55 millimeters. The only problem with it is this specifically for Canon is an f3.5 to an f5.6, and in between hits a 4 and a 4.5. So most everybody gets one of these when they purchase a brand new DSLR, whether it's Canon, Nikon, Sony, Fuji, Olympus, rest in peace. I'm sure people out there probably still own some Olympus cameras. Hey, nothing wrong with it. They're actually pretty decently priced now if you guys are looking to buy a system that you probably won't be able to get any firmware updates for, but I digress. So everybody pretty much gets one of these. I would say that this is probably one of the most highly underrated lenses, and everybody gets them for free. And then eventually what happens is people don't use them enough, so they wind up getting rid of them. I would say if you're just getting into photography, or if you are maybe planning on getting rid of this, I personally would say keep it. Now, that's to say that if you don't, if you plan on upgrading to like a full frame camera, you obviously wouldn't be able to use this on a full frame camera, but they do have like I think it's a 17 to 55 lens for the full frame sensors. But in all honesty, this lens right here is probably one of the most versatile lenses that you have as a photographer, even if you're just beginning. Like I said, I mean, you get a wide lens and then you get a telephoto zoom lens, so keep that in mind. Now, probably another pro for these, so even if you do sell this and let's say you want to pick up another one, you can find these fairly cheap on eBay. You can find them pretty cheap on like the Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist if you go to that route. I was looking on Canon's website and I couldn't find any of these refurbished, but they're new $199, which to me I think is a little crazy. I mean, if you plan on buying one of these new, you might as well just go buy a brand new camera system at that same token, or even like a used camera system that people are selling with the kit lens, and then just keep the kit lens. So another thing with this is it has both image stabilization and autofocus. I'll admit the autofocus on this is quite noisy. I rarely ever use the autofocus on this lens just because, like, I mean, you really hear it when it's autofocusing, and if you're using it for video, you're definitely going to notice it. So another pro for this camera lens right here is it's pretty good for macro photography too. I use the Canon EF-25-2 extension tube. Now, Canon sells, I think it's a 12 millimeter, the 25, and then there are some other manufacturers that make like a 3 set of them, the extension tubes. So if you're ever getting into macro, keep that in mind. Rather than purchasing a macro centered lens, you can actually just get an extension tube and use this lens right here. I made a video a little while ago about like basically like just like a cheap setup for macro photography. And the main reason why I suggest that is the image stabilization on this. So when you're doing macro photography, like you really got to hold it steady. And I know like Canon has the, I think it's a 35, I believe it's a 35 and 80 or a 60, and then they have the 100 millimeter macro lens, which the 100 millimeter macro lens is pretty expensive. Even there's two different versions. One's like 600, the other one's 1,000. I think the 35 millimeter macro lens is somewhere around the $400 ballpark. If you get extension tubes, honestly, I mean, throw an extension tube on this and then go to town, because this lens right here is pretty rock solid for even just doing macro photography with, so something to consider. Now, the cons, I've kind of stated a few. So, brand new, it's a $200 lens, which, to be honest, I think is a little crazy, especially because you get these for free with a brand new camera setup. I see why Canon sells these new for 200, because number one, it's a zoom lens. Number two, it has autofocus and image stabilization on it. If they made these for the EF mount and not the EF-S mount, I think that I would probably pick one up for a full frame camera myself. I just think that these new for $200 is a little crazy. So, like I said earlier, I mean, if you're looking to buy one, try and see if you can find them used. You can probably find them, like I said, on the Facebook Marketplace or on eBay. So, another con to this is it's really not a low light friendly lens. I mean, even at the widest, which is 18 millimeters, you're getting an f3.5, which is still decent, but it's not great. And I've used this lens quite a few times to do like astrophotography and stuff with. You can get by using it, absolutely no problem. You just kind of have to bump up your exposure time to roughly around like 20 seconds to get like a decent exposure at an f3.5 with an ISO of 1600. So keep that in mind. So I think I've already mentioned it, but just want to run back over it real quick. So this is an f3.5 at 18 millimeters and an f5.6 at 55 millimeters. So this is definitely like a daytime portrait lens, or maybe even like a golden hour lens. But I would say that if you're trying to do any sort of night shoots with this, you're probably going to be pushing up, number one, your ISO way past where you want it to be. I got this kit lens when I purchased my Canon Rebel T7, and the Rebel T7 probably, I mean, I don't go past 1600 for ISO on that thing. So you probably would be pushing the shutter speed close to something that is almost unholdable. I would say that if you could probably use this at nighttime, you would probably be shooting at 1600 ISO, depending on the focal length, 4.5 to 5.6 aperture, and probably a shutter speed of like 1/30th of a second. So your subject would have to stay in pretty still for you to even be able to consider to use this at nighttime. Now, another con to this is it definitely feels real cheap. Canon, I know on even the 50 millimeter f1.8, especially the newer STM2, they have a metal mount ring on the back here. This is still all plastic. So, I mean, it's pretty cheap. And that's why I said, I mean, for $200, I don't necessarily think that I would ever buy one of these new, which I think is why Canon offers them in their packages when they sell you a brand new camera. It's feels pretty cheap. I mean, pretty much everything on this is plastic. So, I mean, it's kind of lightweight, which is nice, but I mean, for what it is, I don't know if I'd spend $200 on it. Same thing too. So this is an EF-S mount lens. Only goes on the Canon APS-C crop sensor cameras. Now, if that is not a huge deal for you, if you plan on keeping like your T7 or your T6, then this lens should always be with you. I honestly, like I said, I don't think I would ever get rid of this, even if I decided to go full frame. I'd probably still keep this, and I'd probably just wind up buying a newer APS-C size body. So like I mentioned earlier, it does have autofocus, but as far as the autofocus goes, it is very loud. Especially if you're using this for video, you're really going to notice it, so take that into consideration. And one other con for this lens too, so let's say if you're shooting, an example, so you're shooting a sports game for your nephew or something like that, or a dance recital for your kid. Now, I'm not saying that you're probably going to be doing it all the time, but so if you have it on a tripod and you're trying to get a little bit closer and then you want to get some more of the action, so you're going from like in 55 millimeters to 24 millimeters and then back to 55 millimeters, what you're going to notice is, and I'm not exactly sure what it's called, but basically when you zoom in and you zoom out on this lens, the aperture moves with the zoom. So you're really going to notice like it's going to get darker and then it's going to get brighter and then it's going to get darker. I don't know exactly what they call it off the top of my head. Keep that in mind because it's something that you probably aren't going to want in your videos. And if you're doing something professionally that you need to go back and forth between like a 24 or an 18 millimeter to a 55 millimeter, it's really going to look unprofessional. Even if you lock the aperture at an f5.6 or like an f6.1, let's say, or 6.5, whatever the aperture at 6 is, f6, we'll just call it f6. All right, anyways, so even if the aperture is locked at an f6, which is 0.4 more than this 55 millimeter lens goes to, so even if you lock the aperture at like an f6 and you go from a 55 millimeter to an 18 millimeter real quick and then back to a 55 millimeter, you're really going to notice that it's going to get dark and then brighten up and then it's going to get back dark and then it's going to brighten up again and then back and forth and back and forth. It just doesn't look professional. So, I mean, if that is the case and you ever really need to have a zoom lens like that, maybe you really want to consider getting a prime zoom lens like an f4. I know that maybe if you're just starting out, you won't be able to afford it right away, or maybe you can ask for it for a Christmas gift or something, but just something to keep in mind. Maybe even like if you're doing like music videos or something, same thing. So if you're trying to go from, like a wide angle to a tight up shot, you're going to notice that. It's not like a camcorder would be where you can zoom in and out and not have that like aperture, whatever they call it, aperture breathing. Sorry for any of the terrible lingo. I'm not really 100% sure what they call it. Anyways, that's it. That is the Canon EF 18-55 kit lens. If you guys like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, also give it a thumbs up. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit all the buttons, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.